get a drill?
Freedom is very fragile. It's more fragile when we don't know the truth. You're about to be part of FramersView, where truth is the foundation of every day's program. Join us live every weekday right here on Rumble at 1 p.m. Eastern. Now, here's Neil Frame on FramersView.
Here he is. Howdy, 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 howdy. Welcome to FramersView. It's Thursday. We're here Monday through Friday, every day, 1 p.m. Eastern time. Just in case you have trouble with math, that would mean like the Midwest would be at like, I don't know, noon. And then, like the mountain time would be 11. And then the East Coast, for those of you that don't wear watches anymore. Do you ever notice that? The more liberal you get, the less you wear a watch. It would be 10. Just thought I'd share that with you. This is an informational opportunity. That's the way we need to look at that. So welcome to the show again. Do me a favor, if you would, just click on that like button, click on the follow, comment if you want to, get on the chat, jump in and be part of the show. If you come in when it's not live, it's kind of hard to chat and you'll miss out on the fun. So there you have it. Hey, today is Egg on the Face Day for the Dems. Let's call it the final chapter of Egg on the Face. And I say that because there's really no way to put this other than, we've got a guy that's in Maine that was running for office, got 70% of the vote. And you're going to hear me talk about this a little bit more. There's two sides to this story, but he's got 70% of the vote and now he's out. And you could say, because what? And we'll talk about that. Anyway, we got snake oil stories. We've got MS now, some of the just BS. A candidate in Detroit, Dearborn area of Detroit, which is kind of close to Ford Motor Company. It's a very Muslim community, and it looks like El Sayed is going to get, has a high probability of becoming the candidate in Dearborn. And what's scary about that is what I'm going to play as an audio piece that I picked up. It's really scary and stupid, but stupid is as stupid does. Why don't we want the SAVE Act? We'll get into that a little bit. And I came up with an illustration of what happens when voters get so close as far as Dems and Republicans, and there's not a strong majority. And I'll explain it to you through an illustration. I think you'll appreciate that. Medicaid, it's out of control, but there's more to that story, along with the United States Postal Service. Those are tied together. If you can imagine Medicaid and the United States Postal Service being tied together, that can happen. Then we've got a judge that's been judged, but the judge decided that the judge shouldn't be judged over this any more than it has to be, because went through a lot, and that's a judgment you'd have to make because the judge judged the judge a certain way in his judging. And then there's Patel, our FBI agent, director. What an amazing guy. Where is Mitch McConnell? I think we could start a show on that. Where is Mitch McConnell? We're in week 3. And then the Trump accounts and a couple other things on Trump. Whew, that's a lot. And, judging from that, it's a judge show. Oh man. You know, we knew as soon as we found out about this guy Platner and we saw a few videos, we knew on the Framers View, um, we knew this guy was a bad deal. The things he was saying, the things he wasn't saying, the ideas that he had, the proposals that he was making as far as making Maine and America great. We knew it was crazy. But, sometimes there's crazier people that support the crazies. It's kind of like the judges that support judges. It's political theater. And probably the most obnoxious one, I don't know. Let me think about that. Who's more obnoxious? Bernie Sanders or Liz Warren? Or Chris Murphy, or, we could go down the line. But when it comes to Platner, who's the most obnoxious? And I think, honestly, it's Liz Warren. I think of Liz Warren. When you're watching this, I want you to pay attention to the video. But in the back of your mind, think about when this woman was in like third or fourth grade or seventh grade. By the time you're in high school, you'll have been beaten verbally, probably, by so many people that say you're a dork that you probably changed a little bit or maybe shut up. I don't think she did. But just have that in the back of your mind. So we'll get into that. But here we are today. It's July the 9th, and we've got August, September, October, and then the election. And this is a midterm, and I'm not going to say this is the most important election ever, because there's a lot of elections that are most important. And I would suggest they all are. Because every time these Dems get in office, they hurt us. Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, that team was a huge damage to this country. Jimmy Carter. I would suggest that when Bill Clinton got in office, he wasn't as crazy as we expected him to be. I'm not supporting him, don't get me wrong. But when you look at where we are today, what we had with the Barack Obama candidacy and then administration, what we had with LBJ. People don't know Lyndon Baines Johnson, who was before most of you were born. This guy was a whacked out liberal racist, and he got the Civil Rights Act through because he had to. But it's hilarious what the things he did, and we've had some weird ones, but some brilliant ones that were also weird. And that would be, let's start with Richard Nixon. Nixon was a brilliant foreign affairs president. He was also paranoid to a point that is we couldn't possibly understand. When you have that much power and you're paranoid about everybody around you, you got some problems, man. But, and the solid people, I'm sorry, I'm doing a little history here, but I think we have to set a standard. And one of those standards is before most of you were born, for sure, and was kind of in my mind and understanding what was going on, but not much because I was such a small kid. But Eisenhower, a guy that was a 5-star general, supreme commander of all Allied forces during World War II, hated and loved by his senior officers and the people in the military. It was a very strong line between them. And, he didn't do that much, but he didn't hurt anything. And the other part of it is he's the guy that got the roads started. All those things that you drive down that have big holes in them now because Democrats don't fix the roads. Well, that's his legacy. So everybody has done something, good or bad. And, you take Carter and Biden, they took the economy into the toilet. That's not a supposed thing. That's history. That's legacy. And, then you've got Ronald Reagan, who straightened it out from what happened with Carter. And now we have Trump, who's fixing what Biden did, with way more on his plate than what Reagan had, sort of. We could go into that history, but I won't drag you through that. But here's the point. Everybody says, well, the prices haven't gone down enough. The gas hasn't gone down enough. The this and that, blah, 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 blah. And I've said it before. I'm going to say it again. Carter did his mess. Reagan came in with a scoop shovel and picked up all the poop that Carter left in the yard. And he was starting his second term, not the second month, not the second quarter, the second term, running for second term before things really started to turn around. Now, we have Iran. We have the mess that happened with Afghanistan. We have the fight that went on between Gaza and Israel that we had to get involved in. By the way, Gaza, not Palestine. There is no Palestine. Just so you know. But things are starting to change. The fuel oil prices are down in the 70s. I don't know what they are today. I didn't even bother looking. But things are getting fixed. So that's good. Now you come to the Dems and this election. And this election is fascinating because it has been the greatest dynamic that you can imagine of how Democrats have to close their eyes, hold their nose, and let people get elected and get into politics that don't even belong in their party. And I always remind people, you know how you see a story sometimes on TV, on cable, or a broadcast with some politician you've never seen before. And it's because it might be something that's really important to that person, and they're doing a story about it and they bring him in or her in. But most of the time you don't see him. Well, the split in Republican and Democrat parties is that same scenario. The people you don't see are probably more the common sense people. You take the first 15 and of Democrats and 15 of Republicans that are on TV all the time, and there are different layers of crazy. You're never going to see Chris Murphy on Fox News, and you're not going to see Jim Jordan on MS Now. They're never going to invite him. They don't want him there. They don't want them to tell the truth. And with Chris Murphy, he's like, you'd ask too many questions. Stop it. No, I'm not going to do that. That's where we are. That's how divided we are. And we know that they have to give fair side to both parties, and they have to offer that whether the person wants to come in or not. But when you do something like a show like mine or MS Now or whatever it is, if you bring in a guest that's a Republican or Democrat, well, that's pretty much it as far as that law. You're supposed to at least invite. That's why they always say, we invited such and such a person, but we haven't heard back from them or they've passed on the opportunity. That covers them, and they better be able to prove it. So the problem for Democrats now is that whatever it takes to get elected, whatever it takes to get power, whatever it takes to be able to control everything and everybody and impeach Trump just one more time. Those are the things that's important to them. They'll do whatever they have to. So we hearken back, if you will, hearken back to yesterday or yesteryear And we've looked at the very first example, which is the person I was talking about, the most annoying person of all, Liz Warren, and what she says, what she thinks, and how she supported our buddy Platner. And this is just classic. Watch this.
Graham Platner is the real deal. He's a fighter, and he's ready to take that fight to Washington. Graham Platner has the grit to go against the grain and to fight for what is right. That's the energy, that's the fighting spirit that the Democratic Party needs now more than ever.
We are suspending campaign operations.
You can't make that up. That was hat tip to Mazemore. He puts these things together. It's just classic. The vid bits that I get out from him is amazing. But she was out there, she being Liz, Elizabeth Warren, Pocahontas, and just pushing Platner. And she's a dork, but I don't think she's stupid. Everybody thinks anybody that you disagree with is stupid. That's not the case. They just don't want to know the truth, or they just have to cover it up. And this is a good example. They had somebody that got 70% of the vote, Platner. And they knew that before the election even happened for the primaries. They knew it. And they started pushing it and talking about, he's my guy, he's the one, he's going to make the difference, he's talking our language, blah, 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 BS. And then this blows up. So the yin and the yang, that's the yin and yang. Liz and Platner. He's the guy. We're stopping our campaign. So, annoying is kind of matched up with a steady, really smart, know how to respond Democrat that I think kept pretty quiet on the Platner deal. And this is what I've said. So now you've got another layer. So think of the layer being the Van Hollens and the Chris Murphys and of course the Hakeem Jeffries and those people that are always on TV. And then you've got the next level, which one of them is Debbie Dingle. Debbie Dingle, who's from Michigan, is another person that now has a problem because we know by watching her, she knows that this guy that's running for office, which I'm going to show you here in a few minutes, but it's Platner that is talking about here. She talks about the big tent. And whenever you get into trouble, you always have, I'm going to use a sports analogy. Football. I played football. I played hockey, baseball, basketball, because I'm such a vertical giant. And all of those sports, you go in with a game plan, right? So you have a game plan. In the first half, before you can go into the locker room and go, okay, this isn't working out, you have to start making adjustments. And that's a backup plan. That's plan B, plan C, D, F, G. And they have to figure out a way to keep from getting completely slaughtered. So the plan B for all the Democrats, when they don't have anything else to say, is, well, we've got a big tent. And what they don't say is, so we have a big tent and we have partitions in our tent. And our partitions, we have the wackos that are so crazy we don't even want to have anything to do with them. And then we have our special people like Hakeem Jeffries, who's normal. Not. But Debbie Dingle, she handled this fairly well, except for not with Dana from Fox News. Watch this.
with many Democrats now saying, okay, abandon ship, don't go with him, we got to figure out something else. It feels like Democrats are in this box where they keep finding themselves painted into a corner because of the DSA. How would you get out of it?
Well, first of all, I don't think that the DSA is painting us into corners. I think that we're representative government, and we.
Do you think they're part of the Big Tent? Like, do you think that they fit within the Democratic Party?
You know what I take people back to? I think everybody in this country, Republican and Democrats, think that Social Security is very critical for many people.
Sure.
My father-in-law was one of the.
I want you to look in the behind her with the little characters in the background. That should scare all of us. We'll continue now.
Social Security and was called a communist. Now, I don't agree with some of the things I've heard the candidates say in New York. I don't agree with everything either Haley or Abdul have said. They're both colleagues, they're both friends, and I'm neutral in this race. But we do have a Big Tent, and people now. I want to talk about Maine and Graham Platner, and I would not endorse them in Maine because I'm someone who has spent my life fighting for domestic violence and sexual violence, and got a lot of grief from Democrats. By the way,
do you think that the Democrats made a mistake in not believing Lindsay Fifield, who was the conservative who brought the concerns to the New York Times in the first place?
Yes.
Yeah, we probably should have listened to her, even though she was a Republican and we didn't want to listen to it. And we just ignored it and tried to push it back in the background and nobody would ever know. Except for they did. We did. They did. And he's now pulled out of the campaign. Wow. You know, all of a sudden she was in the middle of, I don't know if you caught this. She was in the middle of, yeah, New York's crazy. Dearborn's crazy. Yeah, that guy up in Maine, he's crazy. But we're a Big Tent. But you know, if you're a business, and I would suggest the biggest business in America might be politics when you consider power and money. Think about that. Power and money. That's what it is. But now they have to kind of back off of the Platner deal, and they still have Syed, which is pretty scary. I'm just imagining how hard it is right now at the DNC and all of these offices of Democrats. What are we going to do with this? And when we go to our home state, how do we address this with our voters? And of course, they will all have their marching orders, what to say. Guaranteed. They're going to do that. But how do they manage it? And how do they not sound totally stupid? And the difference between the press talking with a politician and the politician talking to the public is going to push back more than the press does. We know that. So, one of my favorite people, little Jen, she's talking about Platner. And catch this, when she's talking about you have to listen to the voters. This is about Platner, but there's parts in this that's really important that has unbelievable release of information. Watch this.
It is an end to what has been an unpredictable, incredibly tumultuous, at times fascinating simply because of the political story, and ultimately deeply enraging political career for Graham Platner, enraging for all of us. And we have covered this race from the very beginning on purpose, because I think it's important that we don't put our heads in the sand and just project upon all of you what we think and only talk to people at a table in Washington, D.C. I think one of the most important things we can do is listen to voters, to watch and to try to understand what is happening in this country, even if it doesn't totally make sense.
Really? First of all, listen to voters. The biggest listen to voters, Jen Psaki, Psaki, Jen, is this. You keep pushing back on the SAVE Act. We'll talk about that a little bit later. You push back on the SAVE Act. Well, we know that's an 80-20, really a 90-10 issue, that the public wants the voter ID law passed. Now, the Senate and the House, they're not doing anything. We'll talk about that. But the press, you would think, would say, hey, look, the public they want this. This is something that should be done. They should be saying, we want free and accurate elections and results without the influence of illegals voting. And don't tell me illegals don't vote. Don't tell me that. There's states now that are just, they're throwing out driver's licenses and they're throwing out this and that to anybody and everybody so that they can vote legally. And of course, you've got California, but they're not the only state. I would suggest over the last 5 to 10 years, Minnesota has been in a tight race to be as liberal as California. It's pretty scary. And there's other states like that too, but that's just 2 examples. But for her to say those things and to suggest that, it's nonsense. It's total nonsense. You can't expect, they have no viewers. None. They're spending millions of dollars on these hosts. I need to get a job there. They're paying millions of dollars with these hosts. And guess what? They don't have any viewers. They have an opportunity way bigger than anybody that's on Rumble. We fight for any viewer we can get on Rumble because there's a lot of podcasters. There's basically, when you really get down to it, Newsmax, Fox, MS Now, and CNN. That's it. Now, you've got the ABC, NBC, CBS, but the difference there is that they don't do news except for when their scheduled news programs are. So you kind of separate those out. But why don't they tell the truth? Well, because they hate Trump, first of all. And secondly, they are a machine of the Democratic Party. The Democrat Party. I even say that. It's not the Democratic Party. They're not democratic. They are Democratic hypocrite party. I can't say that. So, could it get any worse? Yeah, maybe. How about Abdul El-Sayed? Michigan, running for office. Listen to what he says. This is an audio version of this guy. Going to pull this up for you and listen to what he says.
I believe that we do need to defund the police insofar as defunding the police is disinvesting in the means of incarcerating someone or killing them on the streets and in investing more in the means of educating and empowering, engaging communities.
This is why when I hear this idea that don't incarcerate, don't arrest, defund the police, and then we'll just go talk to these criminals. Unless you have been around somebody that truly is off kilter and is dangerous, truly dangerous, and I've been around those people. You know what? One of the examples of crazies are the ones that get into the ring. I used to fight. I did it for 17 years and never made any money doing it. Not much. But some of them get in. They're just crazy, angry, nasty people. You're not going to negotiate with them. In fights, you don't negotiate. But those kind of people you can't negotiate with. You're not going to negotiate with Iran. El-Sayed is going to push everything he can about defunding the police, even though the House and the Senate knows that this defund didn't work, hasn't worked, and it won't work. They know that. But they're letting a guy like El Sayed keep saying these things. They let him get into the campaign. And understand, just because you say, I'm going to run for office, well, it doesn't work that way. You have to get in with the DNC or the RNC, the local, the state group, and tell them your story and why you want to run. And it's not as easy as you think it is. So they're letting these people in. And they're letting them in because they are following the direction of all of these wacko socialists, the communist attitudes and ideas. So as long as that happens, as long as that continues, these people will get into the campaign. And will they be beaten? I can tell you this, in Dearborn, Michigan, I don't think there's a chance in hell a Republican's going to win. The same as I don't think there's a chance that a Republican's going to win the mayor of New York or the governor of New York anytime soon. I just don't see it happening. It just won't. It's kind of like a Democrat winning in Texas, although they do. Boy, do they ever! And that's another one. They're everywhere, man. They're everywhere. And they will continue to push and push because they know they have to be patient and keep getting little chunks accomplished and get those people in power, and then you flip it. That's the way every country has become socialist, except for Cuba. Cuba is a good example of where Russia just put the deal together, threw Castro in there, and made it happen. But these things occur all the time, and it's pretty scary. So that said, that's why I say voter ID is so important. And in Wisconsin, there's a guy named Van Ord that he's calling out the governor of Wisconsin because the feds are asking for the voter rolls from the election because they believe there's been fraud. And I wouldn't be surprised if there is. But listen to what he says. It's pretty fascinating.
Why won't Evers turn over the snap rolls? Because he's cooking the books. Why are the other 20 Democrat states, why won't they turn over the snap rolls? They're cooking the books. I want every single dollar that is allocated to a hungry child to go to the hungry child, not to a fraudster. Who else wants that here? These people are literally taking food out of the mouths of hungry babies. And that's unacceptable. You know who knows that? President Donald J. Trump.
This is a great example. The voter ID, the voter fraud, asking for the information that they need, voter rolls. This is SNAP. SNAP is a really big problem. You know, people don't get checked. So you get on the SNAP program, you're kind of a permanent SNAP member because they don't check it. Are you looking for a job? I mean, wouldn't you think if you're paying for their SNAP, for their money that they get to pay for food, wouldn't you think at least they have to prove that they're trying to get a job? Which is kind of silly because there's people. Maria and I went to Burger King. When was it? Must have been Monday or Tuesday. And we just wanted to get a quick sandwich. We out taking doing a couple appointments, and looking inside. First of all, it was two people working in Burger King. Two, one in the cook, one handling the window, and one doing the register. they don't have enough help. They can't get it. I said, are you short on help? Yeah, we can't get people. And she barely speaks English. They can't even get the non-English speaking people to work in the back. Why is that? Because they're getting SNAP funds. They're getting welfare. They're getting all kinds of government programs. And many of those could be working, but they don't. And if they continue to do that, what happens? Well, all that money that goes out, it's not a matter of it just going out. It's your money. You should care. So I needed to get a way to understand how we've got this problem with the the voter ID issues, all of the craziness that happens. You can't get anything voted on and get anything passed anymore because Democrats, you could say, we have a bill that will allow this new drug that ends cancer to be legally put through today. It's been FDA approved. It has all of the proof. It's proven to be, it absolutely ends cancer. Democrats are going to vote against it. That's just the way it is. They are locked into it. So there's a fight that goes on. And I would also say that, the Republicans and John Thune in Senate, for a good example, he's doing nothing. I expected him to do more than what he's done. And I don't know all the pieces of the puzzle of all the moving parts that make it work. But I do know this, there could be more done than it is. But then you think, how do we understand when you have, this narrow margin? And this is the illustration that we have of how that middle point and how they fight with each other. Democrats and Republicans never really make contact. They're done. That's what we've got for Democrats and Republicans right now in Congress. They're all slapping at each other, but nothing's getting done. There's a wall between them, and you're not going to go past it. And in fairness, wouldn't you think that if the Dems get power, the Republicans probably ought to hand over the same result? You'd want to, but we got to get something done. And it's the fraud example. Fraud money, fraud voting, so fraud programs. SNAP's just one of them. Medicare and Medicaid. How many people are still getting their Medicare or their Social Security and they're dead? Nothing happens. Supposedly, when you die and you're on Medicare or you've got Social Security payments, that death certificate is sent to the department and it's stopped. But it doesn't seem to get stopped. Are they not sending it in? Or is all of that paperwork down in a tunnel like it was for retirement with the, I think it was the government employees that I think that was part of Doge. Yeah, because Elon Musk got that all digitized now. I don't know, but so who's making the money? This is part of the fraud scary part. You've got a program that is good. Let's use Medicaid as an example. Medicaid is for people who truly are not financially able to take care of themselves or a loved one financially. And I had a good friend, a dear friend. His wife was gravely ill. He needed help, and he wanted to get on Medicaid. This goes back many years ago. And Medicaid at the time, you basically had to be broke. I mean, there's no money left. There's no savings. You have to sell your house. I mean, it was terrible. And you watch that and you think, Medicaid purpose is for people who, look, here are my bills. Here's what I make. I have nothing else. And then I've got all these doctor bills and these things are stacking up. I can't do this. And now they're coming after me. There's a purpose for it. But the problem is this, and look at this. Guess who's getting rich off Medicaid? Health insurers, other than fraudsters, that is. The majority of Medicaid spending now goes directly to so-called managed care organizations, MCOs, also known as the health insurers, per Paragon Health Institute. So the money isn't coming from Medicaid directly to the family. It's going to these health insurers. And that's what's scary about it. So take a look at this. This is really an important piece of this puzzle. Okay. So what this is, this shows you the problem with Medicaid and the cost of doing business. But there's more to this than just this example. And I'm going to explain to you in a minute. So you look at this, you see the years from 1999 to 2024. The dark blue is the Medicare spending. So that's administration cost. And then you've got the money that's going to people. We now have more money going out of administration than we do to the people that are supposed to get it. But here's the problem. That light blue section should be way less because there's people that are getting Medicaid that don't deserve it. And a big piece of that are illegals. But there's another piece to this that you have to understand. Look at in 1999, it was down to basically, let's say $20 billion. We're now over almost $500 billion in expenditures to spend to keep Medicaid going. So when you think about this from the legacy standpoint, and I've talked about this in a couple of different scenarios, but one of those scenarios is this: you start a business, and at the beginning, even if you get big, you have a cost advantage over the little guy. And I always use automotive because that's the world I came from. You look at a Ford or General Motors, they, first of all, are more massive than you could possibly imagine. When I say massive, the number of people, the cost, everything, they're massive. Then some little company comes along. Let's use Tesla. And they come out with a Tesla car. Well, they don't have any legacy expense. They don't have hundreds of thousands of people who have retired that get health care, that get retirement funds, that get all of the benefits that they were getting when they were employed, just minus a percentage. But it's a huge percentage of your previous pay. It's a legacy expense. Now, you take a Medicaid program, you take a Medicare program. As you go along with that, you get new rules and regulations. It costs money for that. Sarbanes-Oxley, which was a part of the stock market public company rules. It was so hard to operate in. Sarbanes-Oxley, I mispronounced that. You wouldn't even go public because it will destroy your company. Well, it's the same thing when you get all these rules, but nobody's paying attention to who's getting the benefit in the case of Medicaid. So they get this money and they're not supposed to. And let's say Medicaid is paying out an average of, let's make it small, $300 a person a year. Per person, millions. That should scare everybody everywhere. but it's the unions and it's the benefits. I won't say nobody, but very few companies offer retirement plans now. They have retirement in government. They have retirement for police and fire because they don't make enough money really to be able to save anything. And those kind of things are there, but you don't have a retirement plan from your employer anymore. It's a 401k or some other investments. But this legacy that's in these big companies and the administrative costs against these governmental agencies, plus the fraud that goes against it, is why Medicaid and Medicare, particularly, and SNAP, which is part of Medicaid, really, that affects your money and my money, really makes a big difference. And how and when will we overcome it? The answer is it's not as easy as you think, because you can't get rid of people that are still, you can't say, well, sorry, dude, you got to die. It's just, you've got enough retirement money and we can't give it to you anymore. Sorry. No, that's going to work. Doesn't work. But that's part of the problem. Now, you can't fix that totally because you can't take Medicaid, Medicare away. You can't take Social Security away. There's people that survive on that. But there's an organization that I wanted to share with you that is an example of how can we not have this anymore? Do we need this anymore? And it's a consideration, a thought. USPS to raise stamp prices to 82 cents on July 12th. Today's the 9th, 3 days from now. 82 cents. Most of you don't even know what the price of a stamp is because you don't mail anything. Stamps are going from 78 to 82. So they proposed a hike to the Postal Regulatory Commission. According to the April 9th agency statement, the hike was eventually approved. The new rate applies to letters weighing less than 1 ounce, according to the agency's price list. So the Postal Service generally receives no tax dollars for operating expenses and relies on the sale of postage, products, and services to fund its operations. The agency said at the time, adding that it was in the midst of a severe financial crisis. Let's look at that. In May of the USPS reported a net loss of $2 billion for the second quarter of fiscal year 2026, up from 1.26 billion in the first quarter. Now, let's go back to this. They don't get any tax dollars for operating expenses, and they make their money on selling their postage. Okay, so think about it this way. If you are pricing something too high, you're going to lose business. So if all of a sudden gasoline was $25 a gallon, there are a slew of people that say, that's it, I can't do this, right? I mean, that's absurdity, but I'm using it as an example. So you say, I can't afford that. 82 cents to mail something when you can go to your computer, type in a letter to somebody that you know, send them an email. And what do you get in your mailbox? You don't get anything. You don't get your bills anymore if you set up for paperless statements. Your bills come in electronically. I get the advertisers. I get all of this, the promotional stuff. But it's seldom that I get an envelope that is something other than a trash can drop-off. So here's the other side of it. The Postal Service pretty much does as well as UPS and FedEx as far as getting the packages to you. They do their package deliveries, getting packages to you, and the mail shows up every day. 6 days a week. They're delivering mail. So is it a problem that nobody's using mail services? Because I've never been in a post office when there weren't people in there. Is that the reason? Or is it they priced it so high that now people are saying, you've got a box that you want to ship to somebody? You go to USPS, you look at check their price, you run down to FedEx, you go to UPS store. Who's got the best price? They're not competitive. You can actually ship something by FedEx for less money than the Postal Service charges now. So you have to be competitive. The reason that every automaker makes these stupid little cars that nobody really wants to buy is because, number one, they have to give you a reason to come into the store because there's low prices. And number two, there are people that can't afford the regular cars and they'll buy those. So the Postal Service has to be in the marketing business and do a better job. And when you look at what they pay their employees because of unions, they have a legacy problem, which is the same thing ties to what I was talking about with automotive. And every other company that has got a retirement program that's just hanging out there, nipping at you every month to put more funds in there to take care of the people that are on those programs. I've got a retirement program from fire department. It's a massive amount. It's not. But it's something you get. It's something that the fire department has to keep funded until I fall over. At this point, I don't think they want me to fall over dead, but they may. They just haven't said it. But you can see what I'm saying, or I hope you can. That's the way it is, man. All right, so a couple other things. You know, it's not what you know, it's who you know. It's graft and corruption. Do you remember the judge that was arrested and indicted on pushing ICE agents when she was trying to get into I think it was Wisconsin. It was Wisconsin ICE place. And she got arrested. At the time, they didn't know she was a judge. But then she went and she ended up releasing a person that was being tried because they knew ICE was coming there. And this is a different one. She went in there, she found him and said, go out the back door, ICE is coming. That's a federal offense, up to 5 years in prison. And, well, Hannah Duggan, it's not what you know, but it's who you know. Watch this.
Yeah, John, well, this was a landmark case in the fight over the Trump administration's immigration crackdown. And this sentence came down no prison time and just a $5,000 fine for former Milwaukee County Circuit Judge Hannah Duggan, which is far less than the 5 years behind bars that she was looking at. U.S. District Judge Lynn Edelman explained that prison time was not necessary given Duggan's decades of public service, saying there is no indication the defendant acted for personal or private gain. This isn't like the cases of public corruption. This is a situation where an otherwise good person, upset by immigration enforcement in this country, a sentiment widely shared, made a bad decision in the moment. Ahead of that sentencing, we also heard from Hannah Duggan for the first time since her trial started back in December, and the former Milwaukee judge expressed no remorse for guiding federal agents away from her courtroom and sending the illegal immigrant they were waiting for out a back door. In fact, she told the judge her acts that day were consistent with community concerns at the courthouse, and she said, "I will not let those minutes define my life's work. It is my intent to return to public service." Now, that return to public service could be any number of things, including a possible return to the bench if her defense team is able to get this verdict overturned on appeal, which is what they've said they are now going to try to do.
Let's get that overturned and get back into public service. And the judge said, the judge said, and her opinion about ICE is held by many people. What does that have to do with the law? Everybody agrees that toe fungus is terrible. But, if somebody gets arrested, do they really want to say, well, wait a minute, you can't do anything with that person because they got a toe fungus? I mean, it's absurd, but this person broke the law and she walks away with a $5,000 fine, which she probably will never pay. And she'll get back into public service and probably should do her best to not eat quite as many hamburgers. But this is where we are today. Liberal judges judging a liberal judge. Just basically, they said, look, I guarantee you, there was a phone call that happened. Nobody will ever investigate this. Phone call that happened, said, look, I got to do something about this. I know I agree with everything you did, but I got to fine you. And I'm going to have to fine you $5,000 and, no jail time. So just accept it. That's really what we're talking about here. But there is somebody out there that's arresting people. That's Kash Patel in the FBI. Look at this. 113 active spies from foreign countries arrested. The director said these people were arrested for being spies, means our tech stays home and our defense secrets stay locked down. A video shared by Patel on X said. But the FBI didn't stop there. They forced 62 removals of Chinese spies in 2026 alone. These are spies. The cases spread across 20 states, involved the transmission of sensitive military information to Beijing, stealing trade secrets to benefit the regime, transitional repression schemes targeting Chinese dissidents, and obstruction of justice. Every 12 hours, the FBI opened new cases to counter Beijing's intelligence operations, according to the report. Think about that, boys and girls. Every 12 hours, they're opening another event, another case. This is frightening. And, China is our biggest problem. They are technically savvy. They're manufacturing savvy. They are a powerhouse. And now they're out in the ocean, in the Pacific, building all kinds of islands and trying to threaten, basically, America. That's what they're trying to do, I guarantee you. It's so clear that China is going to try something, probably won't be on our mainland. Think about, that thing at Pearl Harbor with Japan. Get everybody's eye off the ball. That's what they would do. So finally, one little other piece that I want to share with you, and this is important because, sometimes you have to investigate and find out about people. And this is about Mitch McConnell. You may know Mitch McConnell as the former Senate leader. Well, watch this from News Nation.
Where's Mitch McConnell? I mean, the 84-year-old senator has been in the hospital for 3 weeks. Nobody knows of a condition. Nobody's heard from him. What do you know, and have you heard from him, sir?
Yeah, no, I have not heard from him. And I think it's a question that Republicans should be asking because he does represent the state of Kentucky. His constituents deserve answers where he is at. I think that the governor of Kentucky has every right to ask after 3 weeks that no one has said anything. As a Republican, I think we need to hold our own party accountable. And so the fact that we haven't heard anything really from Senator McConnell is very discouraging and concerning. And I think that for the representation of the Republican Party and to get some of the bills done that we want to get done in the Senate, it's critical that we have a senator from Kentucky voting in the Senate chamber.
Do you know that he's alive?
I don't. Just the things that I've heard and seen from some friends is that he's obviously not doing well, but don't know if he's alive or has passed away.
Yeah, that's sad. But first of all, may I just say, please don't end a sentence with a preposition. It drives me nuts when people say where they are at. That's incorrect. That's beside the story, but it's one of my pet peeves. Mitch McConnell could be an advantage for the Senate for Republicans if he doesn't come back, because he would be a no vote. Guaranteed. This is about the SAVE Act. He would be a no vote. Why anybody that's not corrupt would be against voter ID, I have no idea. Don't tell me you're tying it to something else and they said something and they hurt my feelings and they stepped on my tail. It doesn't work. And Mitch McConnell has been not well for a long time. I wish him well. I don't like the guy. I don't wish bad on anybody. But it could be an advantage that he doesn't come back. And maybe he comes out of the hospital and he's fine and he gets out. He can enjoy his great big mansion in Kentucky. We'll see. Hey, I'll see you tomorrow, 1 o'clock Eastern time. Until then, do me a favor. Rock on.
Thanks for your support. Join the Framers View Monday through Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern. Thanks for your support. Join the Framers View Monday through Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern.